For centuries and longer, rats have fought tirelessly to repel the incessant frog invasions. Peace was only ever short-lived, until finally a young monarch rose to power. King Rattus, first of his name, unified the rat kingdoms under one rule, repelling Greenwort and his kind back to the putrid swamps from whence they came. Crops prospered, families flourished, and the magnificent Crimson Keep climbed ever higher toward the sky. But as time passed, King Rattus the Savior grew old, and the kingdom vulnerable once more. His people grew anxious, some claiming to perceive a faint odor in the air. Greenwort had returned with a ferocious vengeance. Amassing an army of unfathomable scale, he burned everything in his path towards the Crimson Keep. King Rattus gazed down upon his withered claws, barely able to hold the crown. He had little hope wielding a sword. So it was decided the crown should pass to Whiskers New. Arise, young prince, for the kingdom needs a hero. And so, your tale begins. When his squire woke him with this god-awful noise, the young prince was dreaming about this day, just like he had for months. Now it was here, he better be ready. If he'd known how unlike a dream today would be, he might have stayed in his bed. All the prince had ever wanted was to prove worthy of his father's crown. He might be the smallest brother, but if he was prepared, he thought he had some small chance. Reggie's brother, the chef, offered a fine menu, but after Dennis had eaten, there was no food left. Chef would need new supplies from the cellar if Reggie wanted a decent breakfast. The bard had found the last of the summer raspberries in the bare basement. The bard was quick to offer one, even though they weren't his. He had the ingredients. His brother, the chef, would make you a feast fit for kings. Or so he says. Reggie only ever gets his brother Dennis's leftovers, so he wouldn't know. His brother, the smith, could forge armor and weapons to see off any enemy. He'd make some for Reggie, if the young prince could find blueprints for a rat of his stature. His eldest brother didn't think Reggie could hit a target, even if it was standing still. But Reggie had been training hard. The training dummy's red attacks were too strong to block. It was fast, but Reggie could be faster. Not even Reggie could dodge the dummy's yellow attacks. His only hope was to parry with his trusty shield. The dummy's final attack shook the ground. Reggie would need to dodge to remain unscathed. Freshly squeezed bug juice, drink of champions. Nothing better after a long fight. Dennis was impressed. If Reggie could just grow another couple inches, he might even have been worried. Reggie'd never seen the Crimson Fort so full of ratfolk. The whole kingdom was there. Some even cheered for him. But the king had let his eldest brother lead the procession. If he was scared, he wasn't showing it. He was going to show all of them what he was made of. If nothing else, this'd be no easy win for Dennis. He'd done it. He'd proved himself a worthy heir to his father's kingdom. His dream was about to come apart. The prince woke this time from a dream of blood and frog spawn, finding he had neither a crown, nor a kingdom, nor a father. He needed a place to recover, somewhere to make a plan. Not content with killing the king, the frog horde had torn down his throne room, leaving behind little more than smoldering rubble and the bodies of his kin, dead and defiled. Reggie had never seen such evil, nor felt such rage. Reggie had his crown at last, but not his kingdom. Dennis had returned, but shamefaced. Drunk from drowning his sorrows in the village, he couldn't hold back the frogs there, or stop them taking their brother, the chef. Reggie had to get to Longtail Village to rescue his brother, and fast. If he could fix the travel board, it'd show the quickest way. More than one use for a hammer, and its work on the frog skull seemed to be done. Longtail Village always smelled of fresh, whole bug bread before. Now it reeked of burning fur and gore, and something putrid. Pond slime, and those that dwelt in it. The Frog Clan Bog Brothers. Guard Captain's last act was to secure the village elder in the town hall and bar this gate to the frog horde. But some had got past him. The captain was right. The frogs were inside. The villagers, they had no more fighters. Until now. Reggie had found them. The elder and Robin the ranger, who had been his last guard. The young king sought no thanks for saving them. He sought only to find his brother. If this old rat was right about what was beyond the gate, he'd need to stock up and prepare. Thug of a guard frog wasn't an easy kill, but it was a sweet one. The chef's hat. Reggie must be close. His brother, Chef, beaten, chained, and left as bait. The Bog brothers, stinking like the place they called home, had done this. Their leader, Lancelot, had never been bested in battle. He had a lance as lethal as it was legend, but he also had the only key. The Bog brothers' clan were finally destroyed. Reggie knew they would not be the last. The Bog brothers were dead, and their stench would soon wash away. His brother could go home safe, and the young king would too, after making sure the roads were clear of frog scum. Reggie would need more than a sword on the road now, the ranger told him. He offered the king his best bow, a gift from his guild. The ranger's best bow was little more than rotten twig and frayed string, but Reggie was grateful that he hadn't been offered the other one. The elder had started placing quests on the village notice board. Getting the old rat to part with some coin was no bad idea, considering the funds needed to rebuild the Crimson Fort. The grub infestation had spread. The farm basement was overrun. The farmer should be able to squeeze bug juice in peace. The farmer had fled his grub-infested basement in terror. He was sure they would destroy his bug-juicing machine before long. Reggie assured the farmer he would not let that happen. The grubs were gone. The farmer could now make the best freshly squeezed bug juice in all Ratdom. Reggie liked it with bits. With the path to Longtail Village free of frogs, the builders could start repairs on the Crimson Fort's bridge. With the paths left unguarded, grubs had crawled to the surface. The builders couldn't work while they're there. The builders could start their repairs in safety. The Crimson Fort would soon be able to welcome visitors again. His brother Chef was glad to be home, but the smith was still missing. The chef believed he might have also been captured. Maybe the elder knew where. The village had already started repairs. It would soon be as if the frogs had never come. The guard captain, who had recovered, had spread word of the king's rescue of the elders. To show their gratitude, the villagers would help rebuild the rat fort. Not so lucky this time. The elder hadn't seen the frogs with the smith. But maybe the ever-vigilant rangers had seen where the frogs had gone. Young Robin had been headed to the ranger's lodge. Maybe Reggie could ask there. Rotting corpses always bring pests. If the grubs get beyond the farm, they'd be everywhere soon. Getting to ranger territory wouldn't be an easy journey. The sewers. His royal ancestors had lifted rats from such places. No rat had dwelt here for years. The ranger needed help. Reggie hoped his bow would last the fight. The head ranger saw the smith taken to the tower by the foul Swamp Slayer clan. But the frogs had barricaded the path. Only a heavy two-handed axe would shatter it. Nothing like the feel of an axe smashing through tough wood. Reggie wondered if it would do the same to frog shields. And frog skulls. The ranger was excited to help the king. An unforgettable tale to tell his children one day. The smith's hammer. He would never have dropped it willingly. Reggie was grateful for his help. He needed to get to his brother as fast as possible. Would he find him still alive in the tower? The smith was alive, but the key to his freedom was held by Blocky Magoo, merciless leader of the Swamp Slayers. He squatted atop the tower, croaking orders to his clan. The village would soon be a ruin, and the frog spawn would feast on the dead. corpse of Blocky Magoo lay lifeless on the floor. He had croaked his last orders. Free of his chains, the smith would return to the Crimson Fort. The ranger would return to the lodge to begin to rebuild his guild. The young king thought he best check in on them both. Poison. Applied to any blade, it could affect enemies of any size, giving Reggie a much-needed advantage. More grubs in the sewers. Reggie looked forward to a day when being king didn't involve so much time in sewers. The ranger thanked Reggie for his rescue, but he still needed help. This infestation was of a size he'd never seen before. The young king hoped that was the last of them, and that the smell would wash off his armor. Was there no place the grubs would not infest? Even the sewers were overrun. Any more of them in the kingdom would stink like the Froglands. The young ranger warned the king what he was about to walk into. Grubs like these were not to be underestimated. The grubs were gone, and the stench was contained. The village might still be smoldering in places, but that wasn't enough to stop a hardened business rat like the shopkeeper from selling his goods. The guard captain asked the young king to join him in the trial ground. There was something he needed to see. A monument to honor his father, King Rattus. He would grieve after his kingdom was safe. A crossbow of finest hardwood. A weapon fit for a king. The chef wanted the renovations to start with the kitchen, as rebuilding a fort is hungry work. Apparently, also expensive work. In the golden age of Reggie's kingdom, he would invent taxation. But for now, he needed to complete quests for the Elder Rat to put coin in the royal coffers. The trader's wagon had lost a wheel. He promised a fine reward for a swift replacement. The woodcutter had a wheel. He was willing to part with it, for a price. A scouting party of frogs, out searching for any weaknesses in the village defenses. This needed to be dealt with, and quickly. Robin had been tracking this warband of frogs for some time. They were becoming quite the team in dealing with pond scum. The scouting party had been dispatched, and the village was once again safe from the terror of frogs. For now. The wagon restored, the trader could sell his famous bug brittle once more. Battling frog scum was hungry work. If he could find more ingredients, the chef might make him a feast fit for a king. The smith must have heard from the chef that Reggie was made of gold. But his cause of rebuilding the army was necessary if the frog clans dared return. More grubs in the miners' basement. Big enough to keep the miners from the tools they need to work. The kingdom needed the miners to find iron to arm its soldiers with no delay. The grubs were in the basement, and so were the miners' tools. The mine was at a standstill until they were dealt with. The grubs were dead, and the miners could collect their tools. They swore to work day and night until the kingdom's iron needs were met. Another bug hunt. At least these ones kept their distance. Just when Reggie thought he was done, Robin arrived to tell him he'd found another nest. The mozzie nest was packed with eggs. Robin hoped they'd survive to tell the story, as no doubt it'd be a fine one. His kingdom was being rebuilt on dead bugs. More mozzies. These ones slammed the floor with such power it made the whole room shake. With all the mozzies dead, Reggie wondered where they kept coming from. Now the smithy was so finely rebuilt, his brother could maybe do something with all those blueprints Reggie had collected. Now the chef had a new kitchen. He promised to finally feed Reggie like a king. No more stale cheese. The village shopkeepers might have the bread, milk, and mushrooms he wanted, if some rat would kindly fetch them. Reggie remembered a time when kings sent their subjects on errands, and not the other way around. The king had forgotten to dispose of the corpse of Blocky Magoo. Even dead frogs bring trouble. Grubs. These pups had lost a toy when hiding from the frogs. It might be the smallest of casualties, but the king would look for it all the same. Robin had brought news that a vicious nest of grubs had moved into the tower. No one knew what had brought them there. Reggie swore to find out himself. If the king wanted milk, he'd have to go to the source, the farm. A cow grub, the farmer's pride and joy. Not pretty, but it had quality milk. The statue was made from the finest quality marble. It felt unusual in this dark, dingy place. The ranger had cleared the grubs that had got out, but the nest in the basement still needed to be dealt with. This statue almost seemed to glow. It belonged somewhere it could be seen and appreciated. The grubs and the foul frog remains were gone. The tower was safe for the rangers to use again. Now the chef had his bread, mushrooms, and milk. Reggie hoped the food would improve as promised. A juicy mushroom burger. Reggie felt healthier already. The smith's blueprints were destroyed by the frogs. The only other copy is the original blueprints of smithing, buried with their great-grandfather in the forbidden crypts. He went to open it with his key, but he heard something in there, almost like singing. Reggie thinks the smith has listened to too many old rat tales. The stairway was gone, lost to this labyrinthine, treacherous ruin. There had to be another way out. A noise. But what could be down here now but shadows and bone dust? This was why the smith heard singing. The bard was here. The iron pipe looked like it had been broken recently. Toxic smoke billowed from it. The king couldn't enter. Undead. How long had they just been sitting on this evil infestation? Had his father known? The king thought at first it was some strange clan of white rats, but no. They had been his own clan. When they had lived. The bard locked himself in the crypts when the frogs attacked, but if he'd hoped for safety, he hadn't found it. But the bard had found the old library and seen a book of blueprints there. He also thinks he's found a way out. The book wasn't just buried. The whole grand library was abandoned. Frogs ended up buried in this revered place. More of his father's secrets. But for now, he had found the book. The other mysteries would have to wait. Reggie wished King Rattus were with him, to explain these creatures being here. And, if he were being honest, because he missed his father's reassuring presence. The bard had found a little courage, and even better, he'd found a key. Finally, a way out of these hellish halls. This room was strangely well preserved. The lack of rubble showed how bare it was, like something was missing. Another statue. There must be a better place for it. This cheese was unusually pungent, but perhaps Chef would be able to use this in his recipes. In tiny amounts. The distant smells of fresh whole-bug bread led them home. The bard swore to write a heroic song of the pair's quest. Reggie wondered what would rhyme with zombie. Reggie didn't tell his brother of the undead yet. They still had living enemies to fight, weapons to forge, and a book full of blueprints thought to be lost. Stories could wait. Though the kitchen and smithy were restored and improved, Reggie looked at his broken, gore-smeared throne room. No self-respecting king could rule from here. The costs, as usual, never went down. The ranger wanted to find fresh hunting grounds, but without a compass, he couldn't map them. What was this strange creature? Everything about it unsettled him. He must be cautious. It was dead, but Reggie was no less unsettled. He had a sense it was not yet fully grown. He hoped this was the last of these he'd see. The Mozzie King. Smaller than his female counterpart, but just as ferocious. The buzzing, then the stench of rotten meat. The Mozzie King had come for him. He wasn't the only king with a sting in his tail. With the king dead, hopefully the waves of Mozzie infestations would slow down. Her offspring were all dead, and the mother had come to get her revenge. The Mozzie Queen, foul mother of the swarm, would never stop while she lived. the mother dead, that should be the last of them. For now. Now he had a throne room to be proud of. Not like his father's, but he was his own king, doing things differently. Not hiding zombies in the crypt, for example. The kingdom was restored, but Reggie could not enjoy peace until he knew it was free of threats. It was only restored above. Miners had sighted frogs below. Some were no longer willing to work. His squire thought it might have more to do with a strange rumbling. They say a monster prowls beneath. The old rat was willing to part ways with his compass for the right price. This fine compass was ideal for a ranger tracking beasts in the wild. The compass had guided the ranger to new hunting grounds. He gave his first kill to the king in gratitude. The chef's cellar would soon be overflowing. Dennis brought worrying news. The war chief and his band of pond scum had been sighted in the mine. The king was lucky. The woodcutter had just finished cutting the planks and was willing to strike a deal. Frogs were dealt with, and Reggie had felt no rumbling monster. But sighting the war chief had made Reggie realize they needed to prepare for an attack. The king was needed in the fort. The bridge cracked under his weight. The darkness stretched endlessly below. But Reggie had a kingdom to fight for. He couldn't go back. So he had no choice but to go on. There had to be another way out. Reggie marveled that such crisp greens could grow underground. The chef would make a fine meal of this. The deeper the king got, the older the mines looked, as if the rats had found the tunnels, not made them. But what could dig better than a rat? What was this device? What it was for and who put it here were a mystery. But one thing he could see plain enough. It was missing a piece. Maybe something so strange should have scared him, but it only made him want to know what would happen if he restored it. This looked like the piece the device needed. Now he could open the gate. He hoped. The metal door opened as if pulled by another's invisible paw. What strange world lay beyond? Whatever had lived here was long gone, and Reggie was glad. What kind of beast would live in a place made of such cold, hard metal? "Comrade," the little creature squeaked at Reggie. What was it? Not a rat or mouse. It was armed, but seemed pleased to see him. Maybe it could help the king get home. Having said that he was king, the creature explained that he was a mole and electrician of the great Bolshevik Republic. But little of this made sense to Reggie. The mole needed something called electricity for his tram. It could get Reggie home, and that was all he needed to know to agree to help. The switch that gave electricity must be beyond this room. But they'd have to get past the grub mother first. She was the one infesting the mines with her grublings. Great wings had finally stopped buzzing. She and her young would infest this place no longer. Now the electricity was back, the little mole would take them on his tram. Reggie was sure a tram was the rumbling creature the miners had. His new friend called it Station 24-7. It was kept alive with their electricity. Pipes funneled away the toxic gas, and there was strange music to put a wag in his tail. It was unlike anything Reggie had ever seen or dreamt possible. The guard moles refused to let Reggie pass. They were too busy arguing about what cake to bring to their captain's birthday. Caramelized whole grub or cheesecake? Another statue. They were so similar. They must be a set. This foe was called Mole Mysterio by the crowd. Reggie wondered what name the crowd would give him if he returned to the arena again. The fighter they called Macho Mole was a crowd favorite. Many a mole has lost their head to the brutal swing of his axe. Victory in the arena felt good. Maybe Reggie could learn to like this. This strange device was a blaster. Molecraft more deadly than most bows. Reggie wondered what the smith would think. Blasters make short work of most enemies. The king could get used to this. The mole held the award for crispiest fried crisp buns, but his reserves of cooking oil were all gone. Whatever was lurking in the old sector had him too scared to collect more. The mole had more wonders to show. This automobile could dig them a path anywhere, and fast, even to the Crimson Fort. But it needed to be fed petrol, which the mole said Reggie could get in Station 24/7, but it was not cheap nor easy. No change there then, the king thought. Fighting pits, where the victors were legend and the vanquished were stains on the floor. These arenas were outlawed in his kingdom. When his mole friend said, not easy, he didn't think he'd meant possibly fatal. But it was the only way to get coin for petrol. It was the only way home. Reggie had chosen well. Cheesecake was his kingdom's national dish, after all. Singing, the guard moles went to start celebrating, leaving Reggie to explore the old sector. The old sector had been left to its ruin and to grubs. Fresh cooking oil. Maybe now he could try the mole's fried crisp bugs. This was the fuel pump Jay spoke of, though it didn't seem to be working. Maybe, like the tram, it too needed electricity to work. Reggie didn't know what this creature was, but its teeth and claws were as sharp as they were fast. Reggie wondered what this feeling it inspired was. Fear? Despair. dead, and Reggie could barely believe he'd survived. He hoped this would be the last one he encountered. The pump was working. Time to get this fuel back to Jay for his automobile. With fresh oil, the mole was able to fry his crisp bugs again. He cooked a batch for Reggie. The king made a note to ask the chef to put these on his menu. The king was tired and bruised, but he had the precious petrol. This might be a place of wonder, but it had none of the warmth of home. Something was wrong. The Crimson Fort was locked down with guards at every door. The king had been away too long. A traditional Moletown burger. It had an unusual texture, but it was hearty fare. The enemy had returned, just as he'd feared, but sooner than he'd have believed. They'd slithered in through a broken pipe in the crypts. His brother and the rat guard had driven them back, for now. His brother Dennis pointed the way. He'd meet them below at the broken pipe. Together, they would end the frog scourge for good. His new mole friend offered to stay and help Comrade Reggie with this fight. If the Rat Kingdom fell, Moletown would surely follow. He died as he lived, defending rat folk from the scourge of frog kind. The guard captain had truly earned his place, entombed alongside kings. In the king's absence, the builders had repaired the crypt entrance. Reggie was as glad of this sight as he was it had not cost him any gold. Dennis was waiting, just as he said he would, and called out to his brother. No doubt that was how they found him so fast. The frog scum. The toxic smoke was too thick to follow. But Reggie's mole friend told him there was hope. In Station 24/7, they sold a breathing device that would let him pass through the smoke unharmed. The king could go in Jay's automobile. Jay would stay and kill any frogs that came this way, or die trying. A strange, toxic world lay ahead. Reggie hoped he was prepared. The king was impressed by his brave mole friend. After the war, he hoped to know him and his strange people better. Molberg's shield was thick and heavy, crafted from the strongest plate metal. Getting past it would not be easy. Heavy shields make for slow targets. Slow targets make easy gold. The arena champion, Hulk Mulligan, was a living legend of Moletown. His legend might have to live on without him. Arena champion, King Demolition. They cheered. One legend had died, but another had come to take its place. The device made it hard to breathe, and a battle helm was more comfortable, but this protected him in a different way, from toxic smoke. With this, he would find his brother. Double trouble means double gold. As Reggie cut the final combatant down, the crowd cheered his victory. Bloodthirsty though it was, he had grown fond of Moletown. These devices appeared to give the power of flight. Reggie would have been impressed if they were not on the backs of frog scum. Too late. Reggie saw from the docks his brother's silhouette on a ship surrounded by tribal frog soldiers. No sign of their foul leader. He had to get to his brother. Reggie had little trust in shamans. There was more mystery in this world than his father had taught him. The shaman had gone, but he'd left a key. None had seen a turtle in many seasons. His father claimed he found one here as a boy, but it didn't look old. Reggie was almost 2 after all. Could a turtle reach such an old age? Grateful to be free, and promising entertaining tales of Reggie's father as a pup, the turtle offered to take them across the river to the foul froglands. The turtle bid the pair farewell. Reggie asked his friend to stay by the river. This was not his fight. But Jay never abandoned a comrade in need. They were as brothers now, he said. Reggie had expected something as foul as frog spawn, but the froglands were strangely like home. Apart from the smell. The same pipes that were in Station 24/7 were visible here. This was how the frogs were invading. Jay was furious the engineering that kept moles safe was being used to hurt others. Caged like a common grub. Reggie dreaded to think why the war chief would keep so many captives. This was why the rats had been captured. The war chief had offered them up for the shaman's twisted experiments. The war chief would answer for many crimes this day. The shaman had tried to hide in his workshop. The things he'd made and used on Reggie's key were here. There was nowhere he could hide. The shaman's cruel experiments were over in a puff of foul green smoke. The war chief's throne room could not be far. He was the one who started this, so it was with a sword in his skull that it must end. What was this evil twist on molecraft? A grotesque monster of creaking gears and steam. The sight of it made Reggie freeze. But Jay's fury could not be held back. The sound of his small friend's body falling lifted the spell. Reggie didn't know what this thing was, only that it would die screaming. was no beast, but his own brother in the evil machine. This was the frog's final insult, to turn his own blood into his unwitting enemy. But Dennis knew where the war chief was. Ashamed and angry at what he'd done, Dennis ran ahead, wanting to spare Reggie this fight. Even in the frog slime and its stench of death, it felt good to be fighting with his brother at his side. No, Reggie wouldn't believe it. Everything the evil frogs had taken from him, his father, his friend, his kingdom. They wouldn't take his brother, and they wouldn't take him. The war chief was dead, and the kingdom saved. But what did it matter if his brother was gone? The rat folk rejoiced to have their king home. They had prepared for Reggie's coronation in the throne room. They had been sure he would return to them. To Reggie, it was a bittersweet victory. He had proved himself, but it came at a cost higher than gold. It was the start of a true golden age, free of the scourge of frog spawn. Working with the molefolk below, they built a new kingdom of steam and industry and wonder. But that is, as they say, a tale for another time. The greatest threat was conquered, but Reggie wondered if there were any tasks he'd left unfinished or foes left undefeated. Now was the time to be sure. A new notice on the quest board. A band of musicians had disappeared after a long night regaling the Crimson Keep with their drinking songs, whether they wanted to be regaled or not. Rex, the band's front rat, would know more. With peace restored to the kingdom, Doug organized a grand tournament in Reggie's honor. As tradition decrees, a new king must prove his worth before all the realms. The Crimson Keep was playing host to the traveling squirrel folk on their annual pilgrimage to the Bright Fir. They honored the young king with an invite to their Leaf's Fall Festival, the first outsider to be asked to this mysterious gathering in generations. Reggie was pleased to take some time away from battle to experience the wonder of the great golden woods. Rex the Bard looked nervous. He'd found the crypt gates open. No amount of fermented bug juice would see him go in, but his bandmates were not always so wise. The young king didn't hesitate. Reggie's head was pained from the drinking and the noise of last night, but he'd still found his bed. What had these young bards found? Several empty bug brew bottles littered the floor, a sure sign of bards. Reggie was getting closer. Amy had taken refuge by an old statue and was getting some much-needed shut-eye. Reggie only meant to wake the bard, but his shout awoke the zombified remains of Mausamoto Musashi. Mausamoto was a legendary sword master. Reggie hoped to get one more lesson before putting him to rest. From Mausamoto when he was alive. But now, his dual blades had fallen silent forever. Reggie directed Amy to the Crimson Keep, glad to have found her safe. Seems Amy wasn't the only bard who hadn't reappeared. Rex still needed help. Amy was waiting with Rex. She'd remembered what they'd been looking for in the crypts. The Book of Immortal Song. Maybe Chetty Mercury was still searching the Hall of Books. The dream of music that lasts forever was worth the risk to these talented young bards. Pages from music books littered the ground, perhaps dropped in a hurry. Chetty must be near. But what had made this brave bard run? Reggie glimpsed Chetty running deeper into the crypts. Something had scared him. Something lurking in the shadows. Reggie caught up with the lost musician. But Chetty wasn't leaving without the Book of Immortal Song. Reggie had little choice but to help the bard. As soon as Reggie set paw in the Hall of Books, he knew something was wrong. Something in the shadows, quieter than a mouse. It was Fang Bu, an infamous warlord known for his brutality with the halberd. Fang Bu finally laid to rest, Chetty scooped up pages of the Book of Immortal Song. With a nod of thanks to Reggie, he scurried towards the surface. After all they'd been through, Reggie hoped the young bards gave a historic performance. If any more bards went missing, the Crimson Keep would fall silent. Reggie needed to speak to Rex and the other bards. The bards explained that Johnny Nasher had gone into the crypts to buy tobacco from Bertle the Turtle. There'd been no sign or sight of either of them since. The bard's pipe and tobacco pouch. Johnny would never have left them on purpose. As Reggie felled the last of the undead, Bertle appeared, calling for help. A young rat was under attack. Reggie and Bertle rushed to his homestead. Not a horde, but Crocus Khan. This fearsome Toad King rode his lizard steed into many a battle, but this would be his last. It's rumored that 1 in 8 frogs can trace their lineage to the Great Crocus. But this old toad would sire no more. With Crocus defeated, Johnny and Bertle thanked Reggie for his help. Reggie hoped in the future they would find safer and less pungent places to trade. Rex had asked the king to meet the bards in the cellar. He had a grand vision for the Crimson Keep's dark storeroom. Rex's plan was to convert the dank cellar into a bustling pub, if some rat could gather the materials. Reggie was happy to find what they needed, if for no other reason than it may stop so many bards disappearing into the crypts. The trader was relieved to hear the bards had a trade to fall back on for when this musician fantasy inevitably failed, so he offered a good price. Having the necessary materials, Reggie handed them over to Rex and the bards. Reggie wondered if they had even a basic understanding of construction. Reggie could see himself spending many a night in The King's Tale, basking in the music, sipping red berry wine, and regaling the rat folk with tales of his battles, whether they wanted to be regaled or not. The rangers have heard reports of the strange creature nearby, but they don't believe it. Claims about its size can't be true. Only one way to find out. Another of these fanged and clawed creatures. But if he could kill one, Reggie reasoned, he could kill 2. The Rangers were wrong. The creature was real, and nothing about its size was exaggerated. Sometimes a tall tale is worth hearing. White paint from iridescent larva shells. A perfect finishing touch to any wooden construction. Since Reggie had dealt with the Grub Queen, nothing had disturbed the miners. But now, they whisper of a legendary giant. Reggie believed the mudworm was a long-dead creature of rat pup tails, made out to be giant, but only half the size of a cow grub. Reggie was wrong. These mudworms could have eaten a cow grub and still have monster guts was not how Reggie expected today to go. Still, the head of a legendary mudworm to adorn his royal bedchamber would be no small reward. The Grub King had been sighted in the mines, no doubt in search of his queen. Reggie wondered how best to break the news to him. Probably with a sword. The miners were evacuated on hearing the roars of the Grub King. Reggie wondered if it already knew. The Grub King's tremendous size made it hard to miss. The beast was heading deeper into the mines, to his queen's lair. The miners wished their king luck. Reggie had to get to the bottom of the mines before the Grub King finds the queen's lair, and whatever might be left of her. Moles in the tunnels were not what Reggie expected to find here. They spoke about seeking materials for their rocket. It all sounded very confusing to Reggie. Reggie was shocked to find another mole, all alone in the mines. Seb, an engineer of the Bolshevik Republic, said he was waiting for Scrapper Team Alpha to return. Reggie had to find them before the Grub King does. Seb led them to the Scrapper's location. They had been harvesting materials from the corpse of the Grub Queen. If the Grub King saw them, both. Too late. The Grub King had returned for the culprits, found Reggie and Seb. The Scrapper team thanked Reggie for saving their lives, but were even more grateful to have a fresh corpse to butcher. Reggie sighed. He was just glad there were no more grubs. The village elder has heard worrying news. The miners believe the Stalker Queen has reared her spiky head. Reggie agrees to investigate. The pups were overjoyed to have their toy back. Reggie told them it was the bravest teddy in all ratdom. When Reggie first arrived at the mine, he found a rat miner arguing with Seb the engineer. The mole wanted to head down into the mines to fix the tram, but the rat refused to let him enter for fear of the Stalker Queen. Reggie told the miner he would personally take Seb to the tram to repair it. Traversing the mine was hard work. The Stalker Queen had been busy. Her offspring had spread to every corner. Seb was not used to this much fighting, and was glad to have Reggie by his side. Fighting next to Seb brought back bittersweet memories for Reggie. He was determined that Seb would not suffer the same fate as his old friend. The Stalker Queen and a fresh brood of eggs. I suppose this was a good reason for the trip being left today. Together, Rat and Mole felled the Stalker Queen. Seb swore to get the tram working again single-pawed, in thanks for Reggie's help. Reggie was just happy to have made a new mole friend. King Demolition rarely lost in the arena, but new challengers are always keen to try their luck. This would be a true challenge, unleashing wave upon wave of foes on Reggie. He hoped he had the iron to go the distance. Exhausted, Reggie stood over his defeated foes. He had truly earned his status as a legend of Moletown. He wondered if he preferred glory to duty. Reggie's renown in the arena brought challengers from every corner of the known ratdom. From the cold rivers of the north came the brutal Billy Von Dam. beaver's bite wasn't enough to stop King Demolition. Reggie wondered if he'd gained any fans among the beaver folk. Mohammed Moli made a name for himself with his swift feet and swifter paws. But Reggie could roll like a hedgehog and pounce like a bat. Was as light-footed as any dancer of the Bolshevik ballet, but not nimble enough to overcome King Demolition. The Grub-Buster armor was Molekind's ingenious defense against even the most vicious grub bites. Reggie wondered how it would stand up to his sword. plate armor of the Grubbuster suit didn't stand a chance against King Demolition and his trusty sword. Reggie wondered if the moles would make him a Frogbuster suit. Grateful for the materials, the farmer could make honey again. He gifted the first batch to the king. Sickly sweet aromas filled the air. Reggie never knew roast grub leg could taste this good. Reggie was greeted by the squirrel guide Zazu at the forest edge. She'd been sent to show the king the way to the festival, a secret path known only by squirrel folk. The forest was not at all what the young king expected. He'd heard the bright fir's golden leaves bathed the entire forest in light. There'd been no mention of these giant mushrooms that made the air heavy with spores. The bright fir's golden light fell on the forest clearing and caravans like an enchantment. The mood, though, was not festive, but worried. Zazu, embarrassed, explained the reason they asked the brave young king here was to plead for his help. The squirrel elder and a priest of the bright fir journeyed to the abandoned glimmer mines to harvest bright moss, and had not returned. With the golden light of the camp behind him, Reggie headed back out into the gloom in search of the mines. Signs were not promising. Outside the glimmer mines were vicious beetles. What had driven them from their cave home? The squirrel folk were in more danger than they knew. The squirrel elder's walking cane lying abandoned. If he didn't have it, Reggie wondered, how did he carry himself from this place? The rocks of the glimmer mines glowed with a blue light unlike anything Reggie had ever seen. Reggie wondered what the moles would make of this place. The squirrel elder's lifeless body lay on the floor, the priest at his side. Before Reggie could approach, he found out why they were trapped here. This was the nest of the Beetle Queen. glimmering grave, Reggie approached the still body of the squirrel elder. The squirrel elder rose with a yelp. He'd been entranced from the ritual smoking of extra potent bright moss. Unaware, he almost became the Beetle Queen's snack. Thanking Reggie for the rescue, they headed back to begin the festival. This market stall sells all sorts of quality goods. A few coins spent here would spruce up the Crimson Keep nicely. With the squirrel elder back at the bright fir, with a tankard of bright sap in his paw, the festival of Leaf's Fall could finally begin. No sooner had the elder raised his cup into the air to begin his opening speech, came the clattering of wood and smashing of glass. To everyone's horror, a drunken squirrel had knocked over the table with the bright sap. The festival of Leaf's Fall could not continue without the rare and sacred drink. The squirrel elder turned to Reggie, asking if the brave young king would again save their festival and venture into the shrine of the tapped root to collect more bright sap. In the maze of bright fir roots, the spores were so thick Reggie had to wear his gas mask. Was this infestation the reason the bright firs were dying? The shrine of the tapped root stood before him, but the root looked damaged. Before Reggie could wonder what had done this, he got his answer. A root worm, bloated and enraged by bright sap. Had been banished from these parts for generations. Reggie had a feeling its presence meant something was rotten in the state of bright fir. To Reggie's dismay, the tap was broken. Reggie did not look forward to returning to the Squirrel Elder with no sacred sap and news of rootworms. Though shocked at the news, the Squirrel Elder had an idea. The tap was one of several made in the basement woodsmith workshop of Castle Dray. Perhaps Reggie could look there. Approaching the ruins of Castle Dray, Reggie's whiskers twitched at the familiar stench on the breeze. He refused to believe it, after all he'd done to be rid of them. It could not be. The frog scourge had returned, a pestilence on the sacred forest that could not be allowed to spread. A slapping of webbed feet from the basement. More pond filth waited below, and would soon feel his blade. The frog squatter was none other than General Hackett, no better than a common thief looting supplies. The only thing he'd be taking today was his last breath. Satisfaction of the Frog General dead at his paws, Reggie found the replacement tap. The squirrels would have their sacred sap. Reggie was surprised to find a mole in Bright Fir Forest. The mole was embarrassed. He'd got lost going from station C-19 to station 24/7. Reggie sympathized. Those tunnels were a tough route. Lost he may have been, but still enterprising. The mole had armor for sale, if the king had the coin. The mole had heard of this king of rats who traveled the underground, but never believed it was true. Perhaps Reggie knew the tunnels well enough to give him directions. The king barely noticed the journey back to the Bright Fir, dwelling as he was on the return of frog spawn to the ratdom. Where there's a general, an army must be close by. Reggie handed over the tap, but wished he could spare the old squirrel the pain of hearing frogs were in Castle Dray. The squirrel elder could not allow the festival to continue, knowing pond scum squatted in their ancestral home. Reggie did not need to be asked. He knew what needed to be done. Reggie could not believe the frogs had returned after all he had done to be rid of them. Pond scum never learn. As Reggie made his way towards the ruins of Castle Dray, the stench of pond scum once again drifted in on the cool breeze. The familiar scent made him wonder why the frogs had suddenly reappeared in the ratdom. He'd heard tales of the great Castle Dray from his father's whiskers, but it was hard to believe this mushroom-pocked ruin was ever that once proud place. The evil frog spawn had been looting. These frogs believed they could make the central tower a new base, but Reggie would show just how wrong they were. The central tower. Whoever was collecting all these supplies would surely be at the top. The young king had thought his lust for revenge was sated, but he would not be satisfied until every frog in his kingdom had croaked their last. A strange crunch beneath his paws. Reggie looked down to see seeds on the floor. Jars of golden Bright Fir seeds were all around, enough to plant 100 forests. Reggie wondered if the squirrel elder knew they were here. Seems he wasn't the only one here for vengeance. Shield Maiden Yellowtongue was waiting, screaming the name of her fallen brother, War Chief Greenwort. was returned to peace. There was a shrine in the room, carved figures of Reggie and his enemies in Bright Fir Forest. The frogs had planned it all to lure him here. The squirrels at the Bright Fir rejoiced to hear Castle Dray was back to its somber state of peace once more. The squirrel elder could start the Leaves Fall Festival at last. Reggie basked in the joy of the squirrel folk, as warming as the golden light of the firs. He reclined in his chair and was honored with a cup of bright sap. Being king has its perks. The pilgrimage to Bright Fir was not an easy wagon ride. This family's wagon wheel broke in the mud. They offered a reward if Reggie could find them a replacement. With the new wheel in paw, the wagon would be on its way. Reggie assured them they'd not missed the festival as there'd been a few minor delays. The rabbits of White Whiskers had sent their most agile warrior. It would take more than a hop and a skip to overcome the formidable Gray Ears. Put up a hearty challenge, but his grand hops were no match for Reggie's iron will. Captain Blacktail, a treacherous pirate, notorious for his adventures across the 3 seas. Reggie wondered if he was as fearsome on land. Sea Rat put up a good fight, but Reggie thought the captain might be better off sticking to the ocean. Dennis had returned with a vengeance, fully armed to the whiskers. He'd already lost one tournament and was determined he wouldn't lose another. again felt the bitterness of defeat at his younger brother's paws. Eivor was an old ally of King Rattus. Side by side, the pair had fought frog scum together many times. Could Reggie live up to his father? Eivor was here to find out. Admitting defeat, Reggie knew he had passed the old rat's challenge. The young rat truly was the people's king. A fitting reward for winning the tournament, Reggie was presented with the king's key. It's a good thing Doug had eventually found it, as Reggie had been sorely tempted to break the lock himself. But as they say, curiosity kills the rat. The king's chamber smelled of fresh lilac and gooseberries, while the bed glistened with crisp silk sheets. Strangely, a slight breeze blew from behind the bookcase. This half-rat, half-frog abomination must have been the work of his father. Reggie wondered whether this was the source of all the undead in the crypts. Another of King Radis's secrets, best kept hidden.